Hi everyone. This is Abuse on Men channel. Thanks for joining again. And I'm also here with Hattie for the last and final video in the series, which is comparing abuse on men versus abuse on women. And if you haven't seen the other videos, I would definitely check them out. We started off with video 1, which was about getting into an abusive relationship. Video 2 was about staying in an abusive relationship and what kept us in that relationship. The third was about getting out and the difficulties and challenges and how we did it. And the fourth, which is this video, will be about the recovery and aftermath, and also lessons learned and triggers. Hattie, thanks for joining again.
Pleasure.
I think this is the video that I don't know. It's definitely the one that I think is most interesting, and I suppose it's because it's the one that perhaps is the most, I suppose, inspiring for people who are still in this relationship, to see what it's like on the other side, to see the challenges that faced and what that recovery path might be like. I mean, I feel that every recovery is different. And I know your relationship, Hattie, was much shorter than mine, but of course had its own challenges as well. Perhaps I will start this time with my recovery and aftermath. Just as a very brief summary, I was in an abusive relationship for just under 2 years. It's now been just under 2 years since that relationship ended. And I would say, if I was to split it up into different parts, I would say the first week was just pure relief. And then it was the realization that I was in an abusive relationship. I had no idea before. And I think I discovered it on YouTube videos or TED Talks. I found them incredibly useful. And then after that, I basically was in denial, I guess. And I didn't believe I was in an abusive relationship. And all the videos I watched, and I watched loads, and I was just watching one after another, all different lists and signs and from sort of big red flags to minor things, and every single thing I was watching, I started the videos thinking, oh, it wasn't an abusive relationship, and then I was watching it, like 10 signs of an abusive relationship. 9 of the 10 were always things that I had experienced, and it was just quite shocking to realize the true extent of what had happened. And I think that took me a long, long time to really accept it. And I actually think I only properly accepted it about, I would say 2 or 3 months ago, when I started reading books about it. And in those books, there were loads of stories of other people who had been in abusive relationships. And again, all of the stories were exactly the same as mine. All the different elements of the abuse. And I think that in turn changed my view of my ex from when we broke up. I was always in my mind thinking, well, she, it wasn't her fault, and she didn't mean it, and she just had a tough childhood, and she's trying to help sort herself out, and it's just a shame. To really understanding that she knew exactly what she was doing all along, and she's not a good person at all. And I think that realization of saying that someone that you felt deeply for and cared about a lot and spent 2 years basically doing everything you could to make them feel better and help them, to actually understand that they were just a very, I suppose, evil person, or a bad person, and after being conditioned to say the opposite for so long.
Yeah.
And in terms of my moods, I guess they were up and down and up and down. The first 6 months, it was very very happy and having a great time. Then I started to drink too much alcohol, going out, and then that culminated in me crashing an electric scooter, into a parked car, which ended me up in hospital and needing 5 stitches on my head, and basically realizing that I did this on the busiest road where I lived, with buses all the time, completely drunk, and that really could have been the end of me. And it was just very lucky I actually hit my head on a parked car, obviously without a helmet. And I think that was a very big wake up call, that I perhaps, I don't know, needed to deal with this in a different way.
How long ago was that, Nick? How long after you ended it?
That was March 9th last year. So it was about 6 months after the wake up, and just over a year and 3 months ago. And I dislocated my shoulder as well. I damaged my knee. It took a while to see all the specialists and get all the MRI scans. They also discovered a blood clot deep in the middle of my brain that had been there all along, and now needs like monitoring all the time.
Well, at least something good came out of it, if that was discovered.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that the most challenging thing I found a little bit recently is just separating my feelings from COVID versus my feelings from the relationship and dealing with that. But I have found, I'll just sum up briefly, but I did find, I wrote a lot of stuff. In the first month, I wrote everything I could think of, in text, in poems, whatever I could do. And I found that very therapeutic. I also started making these videos, which was very helpful as well. And I really want to help others to realize the extent of abuse, and help people leave that situation, or help their friends or family. I would say in the last 3 months, I feel more myself than I ever have. But there are definitely times where confidence was a big problem, for sure, in the last 5 months. That I kind of solved by going out a lot, and I got the confidence back. But yeah, now it's just a question of understanding what's COVID related and what's relationship. But I feel now my struggles are more from COVID and the isolation of sorts, or something around these lines, than the relationship. But I guess life is a struggle for everyone these days.
I wonder if being stuck physically, like with lockdowns, is maybe a bit triggering for you, though, in terms of being like quite trapped by this individual. I don't know, but I imagine it can't help having one on top of the other.
Yeah, I can only think of how difficult it would be for people who are in these relationships down with these people, with these abusers.
Yeah.
Especially when there's no real way to get out. But I do know that there are a lot of you got people in that situation got to find a way to talk to their family, friends, and leave. It's never too late to leave those relationships. So I suppose the only thing I haven't covered is triggers, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Perhaps Hattie, you can talk about your recovery.
So certainly I had exactly the same realization as to what was going on through other people's stories, exactly like you did. And it's quite extraordinary, the patterns that appear when you start listening to other people's experiences with abusers, and it's like some kind of playbook that they all know. It's quite bizarre. And yes, the realization was, fortunately for me, very early on, as I covered before. And because I was away from my abuser for a period, just as a part of my life plan, I was just coming home away from my abuser. And that space enabled me it shed light on what was actually going on and allowed me to discover the piles and piles of lies. And then from reading about the kinds of people that lie, obviously it's not only kind of disordered, like sociopathic types, it's also traumatized people and people who have actual problems who are dealing with them through lying. But it was through watching other people's stories that I realized that this liar was of a different kind. He was of the sociopathic type because every single lie was targeted and manipulative. And yeah, so then I think I touched on it before, the extraordinary double brain situation, because it was so fast. It was so going from feeling high on love and like really like nothing I'd ever felt before, like certainty about this person and how much we were meant to be, to like literally 2 days later being very frightened of him because of what I discovered over those 2 days. And the research that I did as well. And it is there's an amazing pool of information if you're looking for it, with people like us talking about their relationships and how crucial that was to getting me out of it. So then I was left with this like double, trying to reconcile these two versions of reality. And that was probably the hardest, mentally, the hardest thing to get over. And the way that I recovered definitely was through talking about it. And I was so lucky to actually my parents basically like took me in, and I lived for that winter in the UK, back in the UK, like in a onesie in my parents' house. So they just let me talk about it, talk about the experience constantly. It was the only thing I really talked about. I was just researching all about these stories and this personality type, and it was just like one of the discoveries that I was making and dots lining up, and that enabled me to fully recover quite fast. Also, I didn't have I wasn't under that spell for so long, but I would say if you are going through anything, I would probably say anything traumatic, talking about it is extraordinary medicine, because I think you have to get it out to make sense of it. I don't know if you also had people, Nick, to like repeat the stories to and help you make sense, or if you are still doing that.
Yeah, so it's a very good point. It's totally something I forgot, but I remember the one thing that that I remember or that happened after it ended was a realization, like you said, of the total fear of that individual, of the abuser. And I remember when she moved out, I had a friend come to make sure he was with me and wouldn't leave me alone with her while she took her stuff. I
Mm.
changed the locks. I asked for the keys back, but changed the locks anyway. Um, and and then I basically cut her off from all the social channels. But I was scared. Also, making the videos, I was scared that she would find them.
I thought
Uh,
so brave when I found your videos. That was the main thing I remember. It's like quite inspiring. It's the only way, the reason I'm doing this now is because you did it. Um, but yeah,
yeah,
and like I just want to say the other thing that I think is that I've only realized it's going through it myself is how, like, yes, talking about it, but for me, talking about it with people who believe me, like these stories are strange and they are insidious, what we went through, and it's quite hard sometimes to describe the real darkness of these situations, because in a way all humans are susceptible to some of this behavior. We all sometimes lie. We all sometimes emotionally manipulate. We all sometimes like get overreact or whatever. But it's quite hard sometimes to describe like the patterns and how dark it is, and to have people around you who believe you and like take you seriously. I mean, if I didn't have people around me who did believe me, that would be the hardest. I mean, did you find that you knew who you wanted to talk to and who you didn't, kind of thing?
right. So basically, because of the fear that I had,
Mm.
um, I basically only wanted to talk. I felt safest talking to people that didn't know my abuser, that had really no connection with her, and certainly didn't have their phone number, and she didn't have their phone number either.
Mm.
And luckily, I had a few friends who I was very good friends with, who were quite separated. And I think that was also probably due to the fact that my abuser didn't want me to be friends with a lot of people, so it's particularly girls. So there was a long list of people that I hadn't spoken to for a long time. And I do remember telling them, and what was so therapeutic was not just telling them, but actually seeing their reaction to what was going on and their disbelief for what had happened.
Mm.
And like you said, in that moment, you see that they believe you, and I'm like with other types of abuse, like abuse at work, for example. One of the biggest problems with calling it out is that you you know that people just won't believe you, because that abuser usually just targets one person.
Right.
So when you tell your friends that you've been abused by your ex, or you tell your colleagues that you've been abused by your boss, everyone's likely reaction will be, yeah, but they didn't do that with me.
Mm-hmm.
And, they seem great to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, particularly in a work atmosphere, where they've seen that person all the time, or they may be managed by that person as well. There's a real lack of um, believing you.
Yeah.
But I have to say, in the relationship side, my friends did believe me straight away,
Mm.
and they couldn't believe. They couldn't they were just shocked at the scale of it. Um, and I think the people that matter believe,
Yeah.
and people that don't, they just don't get it. And I think it was actually when I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who just didn't get it that made me make the first video.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Has he watched it, his friend? Has he been?
Uh,
I mean, I know it wasn't for him, but like just.
Yeah, I don't think they have watched it, is the truth of it. I have actually had conversations with them since then,
Yeah.
and they still don't get it.
Oh,
And I think it's just a case of, unfortunately, some people just don't get it. But, I have some amazing comments on the channel, and, one of them is like, saying that, there's this thing that you're weak, or there's a stigma maybe that you're weak, or that that you somehow not deserved it, but you are, you I don't know, like prone to it, or and other people aren't, and that it would never happen to anyone else, and you were just not the right, a weaker character maybe.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I still feel that way. Like, I still feel people judging in that way, like thinking, oh yeah, well, obviously, it makes sense that he was in an abusive relationship, you know. And I kind of feel that when sometimes I tell people, um, but I know it's not true. Um, it's just it's
one of
just
the
a
biggest myths, I think. I think it's a really unfortunate myth, and I've seen it perpetuated um, even by, I've seen like psychologists writing about this stuff. But in terms of like the statistics, it's actually been found that victims of abuse are more likely to have come from strong, stable backgrounds and have not experienced, they haven't experienced like trauma or terrible things in their past. And therefore, they are very trusting, kind of open people, quite the opposite of the kind of quivering, kind of meek kind of idea of what a victim is. And I have to say, like, I mean, I was one of those people who thought it would never happen to me. And anyone who knows me well knows, I'm quite bullshy and quite confrontational as a person. I'm quite cynical, and I'm like, I've never been treated badly by a man before. Like, I mean, I've been through, whatever, I've been through stuff, but I've never felt like I've been screwed over ever. Because I felt like I could always like sniff them out, And then, so from my point of view, I have enough self-awareness to know that, and confidence to know if it can happen to me, it can literally happen to anyone. And just in terms of like, because I'll just go on a bit about the recovery a little bit in terms of, because the hardest thing for me was I had been a very confident person and very confident in my instincts about people, very open to people. And after this happened, the hardest thing was like that complete undermining of yourself. Like I completely failed to see how terrible this person was, and it was very hard to work out how I could go forward in life and trust people again. And I remember it was actually my wonderful dad who like totally set me free again. He said to me after a while, I was talking to him about this, and he said, even if it could happen again, it's more important that you learn to trust again, that you do trust. And I think that's true. I certainly don't feel like it could never happen to me again. I think it could, but I think that's the risk of life. And also, I feel more equipped, obviously, having gone through it once. We can talk about lessons learned, but like in terms of dating, it's been very interesting and quite good for me, I think, in the long run. But yeah, do you remember? I mean, was there anything anyone ever said to you that, like, I don't know? I mean, it's so different your experience, but like, has helped you to open up and trust again, or are you still working through that kind of?
I don't know. It's kind of, it's it's kind of in a way a can of worms, and a little bit that you open it, and the more you delve into it, the more you see there's more to delve into. Um, and there's always new things I'm learning about myself and adjusting and changing.
Mhm.
Um, Definitely not the person I was before.
Okay.
Huh?
In what way do you feel changed?
Don't know. I feel like I think the saddest thing I think of all in a way is I don't know. I feel like I lost the 2 years of my life with that relationship. Um, and then I almost lost, I essentially, I don't know why I feel like this. Like I feel like I also, in a way, lost the 2 years after as well.
Mhm.
So by recovering, and that's like 4 years of my life just dealing with it. And now I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to deal with it anymore. It's ridiculous. I need to move on with life. Um, I suspect it's much like a death of a close family member, which I've had, unfortunately. But it's one of these things which may well just stay with me,
Mhm.
um, and maybe it will fade, and I'm sure it will fade in time. The feelings, I mean, it would be a loss as well, but the in the way that a death will change you, it's the same thing, I think.
Mm.
Um, there's definitely a lot of positives that come out of it, and I think it's probably worth talking about. That it's definitely not all negative, that's for sure. Um, I mean, the positive side is, as much as I do struggle with my negative thoughts maybe that are in my head of you're going to be alone the rest of your life, or you've lost the 4 years of your life, and that you were better looking perhaps, or something like this, right? Or that you were more confident before, but ultimately I am more relaxed now than I ever was. I'm more happier now than I ever was. um, I'm going after things more now that I actually want. I've been released to do what I want.
Mhm.
So immediately after I got out the relationship, at work, I was promoted and hired lots more people. Then I left and started my own business, which has grown really nicely. I was able to save money.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And just feel more relaxed in living, and um, there's and also being able to feel that I can help others more as well,
Yeah.
and um, and meet new people, meet good people, meet who I want to meet, do what I
Mhm.
want to do when I want to do it. Um, there's a huge amount of positives for sure,
Yeah.
um, but it's it can be tough at times, and again, it's like I said at the beginning, it's a little bit tricky to separate COVID related to relationship related.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Because life is so on pause, and it sounds like you have felt, yeah, like this, like your life was like that, like almost on pause, being in that abusive relationship. It was like, in a way, time lost. It sounds like you see it that way. So then the COVID comes and it's like more time. I can imagine. Yeah.
yeah. Also, from being always growing up with family, and then living with roommates, and then living with my abuser, and
Mm,
then living on my own,
mm,
and then COVID, being completely isolated,
yeah.
um, makes it a little bit trickier. Um, it's for sure. I know one thing, and that is that every month and every I would say every quarter, I do feel better and better and stronger each. And like 3 months ago, I really felt more myself than I have in 5 years. Those are very positive
Yeah.
things. Um, Perhaps we'll talk about triggers and
Yeah.
yeah, let's go with that one.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell a story about when I realized I had a trigger. It's a dating story. So I have found since this ended, which was like 3 years ago. Obviously, at first, I was just like in my onesie at home, being taken care of by my parents, and just talking endlessly. And then I started dating on the apps, and I'd never done that before. And I found it really quite empowering. And little by little, it taught me to like trust my instincts again. But like I guess it was like a year ago or a year and a half, I went on a date with a guy, and I have to say, I've come to the conclusion after this experience with an abuser, that it's very hard to pinpoint red flags in a way that would definitely help you avoid it happening again. But one thing I think was clear to me, is that feeling when I met this person, this like quite instant, very strong connection, and almost a high of being with them. That feeling I had not felt before. And I think that feeling itself is a red flag to me. Like I will recognize that feeling, and it's strange because of obviously being attracted to someone, but at the same time it makes me very anxious. So yeah, I was on this date with this guy. We got on amazingly, really well. Like immediately, we were chatting all night in this pub until it closed. And he felt like a kind of friend. Like it felt really easy. And I was very surprised when he asked if I wanted to go back to his. And I said, "Oh, let's just meet next week. Like we've had such a nice day. We don't have to carry this on now." And anyway, cut long story short, I did go back, and I told him before that I'd have a drink and then I was going to go home. Like I'm not sleeping with him. I'm not staying over. I'm having a drink and I'm going. So I mean, on the way in the taxi, I actually started feeling really anxious, and I should have got out. And I told him I was feeling anxious, and he didn't. I think looking back on that moment, a nice person, if they are with someone who's like obviously anxious, they would help them not be anxious and get them home. He didn't, and but I went into his house and we had a drink, we had a nice chat, and then I said as I was going to, okay, I'm going to go home and I'll hopefully see you next week. And he turned. He got really, really angry. And it wasn't that his behavior, it wasn't that he did anything that was obviously like he was going to hurt me, but that flip was incredibly triggering. And I started like physically shaking, and he said, "Oh, look, you're shaking," but he still didn't help me to get home. And as I was booking the Uber, he was getting angrier. He just became someone I didn't recognize. He wasn't the guy I had known in the pub. I mean, those feelings I had in the taxi on the way, I should have got out then. And it's a process of learning to trust your gut. And I'm getting better and better at that. And it's difficult because it's like a push and pull because you're attracted, but you're also knowing that this is potentially an off one. But since then, I've managed to avoid, when I get that feeling, I just cut it off. So yeah, a trigger for me is definitely a feeling of high connection, like really fast, and anyone whose behavior changes dramatically, or anger over nothing, like anger over me wanting to go home. That was very triggering, very triggering. So yeah, that's probably has been the main thing that I've come away with. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember you have told me once about a trigger that you have, and you told me about when you were driving in a car. It was
Yeah.
actually a friend, wasn't it? It was a friend. And yeah, carry on.
Yeah, no, I've three that come to mind. I'm sure there were a couple more that I can't think of, but they're three different dates, and one was or with different people. One was when I was sitting with this girl, and we were talking about something, and then she said something like, "Oh, you don't have to be embarrassed" or something, and I was like, "No, I'm not embarrassed." And then she goes, "Oh, are you nervous?" I'm like, "No, I'm not nervous." And then she goes, "Yeah, why are you like fidgeting or going red or doing this?" And I'm like, "No, it's fine. I'm relaxed." And then she just kept pushing and pushing and saying, "No, you are nervous. No, you are. I can see it. You're nervous. You're nervous. You're nervous." And I was just like, why are you driving me mad about this? I already told you I'm not. You know, it's like, what are you trying to prove? And it reminded me of my ex basically telling me how I was feeling uh, and, why are you acting like that? Why are you doing that? Why are you, thinking that way? You are, I can see it.
Mm.
Why are you lying to me? Why are you, and it was that whole pattern again.
Mm.
And I just,
Invasive, like back off. Like it sounds really like she's trying to get into your head a bit.
yeah, I don't know what it was. I know she wasn't a bad person, and it just was a trigger. But it was certainly something where I just thought I can't be with
Yeah.
with this person, and I'm aware of it, and I was calm, but I just thought, no, I can't do this again.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was a case and something recently where I've been on a few dates with a girl, and and we kissed and were a little bit affectionate. And then I saw her, and then she basically didn't want me to come near her, like didn't want me to kiss her or hold her hand or anything. And it was not because she was angry or mad at me or anything like this. It just felt like a power play. And I don't know why she was doing it. Um, but I know I didn't do anything to deserve it, but to be with someone that was just doing that made me feel like I was with my ex. When she was ignoring me and get off me and don't touch me and all of this stuff, and I literally just had to get out of there because I couldn't deal with that. Um, and then the third one, as you said, was actually happened to me a few days ago, which was I was in a car with this girl that I'd been on a date, and um, I realised that it wasn't for me. Um, and then she started having an argument in the car with me, questioning why we went out, why we were dating or whatever, or what happened that night, or something along these lines. And just the fact that it happened in a car, and me having to explain myself in a car, and because I'd been in 5 hour, literally not exaggerating, 5 hour conversations in cars with my ex, going round in circles about why I acted this way, why I did this, why I did that. I don't understand you. I luckily this conversation started just as we got to my place, and I just couldn't get out of the car quick enough, and I just didn't want to answer any question that she had. I was just like, I'm not doing this. I don't have to explain myself. I'm certainly not having this conversation in the car. So that's it.
I suppose that these triggers, in a way, in some ways, can be helpful because you're not going to go anywhere near those patterns if you're aware that they're making you feel like that. And I suppose the only thing that probably both of us should be a and anyone coming out of an abusive relationship needs to just check in and be like, is it like, to be honest with you, when I was in that taxi back to that guy's house and I was feeling anxious, in my head I was going, don't let the experience with that abuser stop me from being spontaneous, which I've always been. I've always felt like I can do, like, trust myself and trust others. Like, don't let that experience like inform this experience. Like, I'm only anxious because I've had the past experience, and I kind of talked myself into like convincing myself it was fine to go to this guy's place. And it's very hard to like unpick like what is your gut and what is being over anxious. But I mean, it sounds like in your cases that you don't look back and think, gosh, it's sad that I had those triggers because that could have been something good. In each case, it sounds like it was taking you in the right direction.
Definitely. I'm
Yeah.
always, immediately when it happens, I'm always so self-conscious and so self-aware of it. I ask myself in the moment, you know, am I overreacting? Is this okay? Is this something that has happened before or many times before? Is this a one-off thing? And is this someone I want to be with regardless of what happens?
Yeah.
And is this something I'm willing to oversee and continue? And actually, in the girl that I dated up to recently with the car, for instance, a lot of the dates, the first, second, the third, the fourth date, there were things on that date which I wasn't comfortable with, and I like I was kind of screaming inside in a way with certain triggers, other triggers, minor triggers maybe that were coming up. And I was just thinking to myself, you know what? It's okay. I feel it. I understand it. I recognize it. It's not a bad thing. It's just something I'm going to push through, work out, and see where it goes. And I did that for a lot of those dates. It kind of, the way I say it, it sounds like I have a lot of triggers and it's stopping me. But really, I think the girl that I dated recently was quite unique in a way that she kind of pushed my boundaries a lot. There was a lot of unexpected things that happened. But usually it's not quite like that. But I always do try and actually give the situation the benefit of the doubt, but aware of it. And yeah, I guess it's different from a guy and a girl's perspective, because from a guy's perspective, it's tend not to feel threatened. Whereas from a girl's perspective, you know, you when someone's screaming or shouting at you or turning and you're at their place, that's a very different dynamic, which you start to feel unsafe with.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting question, because when I think back to my fear of him, of the abuser, I ended up being very physically scared. But it was more, I mean, I was scared because I didn't know what he was capable of. Someone who was able to lie like he did and manipulate me like he did, I just didn't know what he was capable of. But I can imagine the fear being quite similar, because it wasn't necessarily that I thought he was going to like physically like hurt me, although I wouldn't put it past him. But then, like, things like stalking and controlling, manipulating. Of course, violence is the worst form of abuse. But I can totally imagine being scared of someone who is physically weaker than me, who you don't know what they're capable of. Like, that's it's a very uncomfortable, scary thing when you don't know what someone's capable of. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, I mean, from the dating that I've been having, I think the one sort of thing that I'm doing is I am, how would you say, I am, however uncomfortable it might be,
Mm.
um, like, how would you say, always checking with myself if
Mm.
it's okay, if it's not okay. I was thinking, you know, I, I haven't been in a relationship since my ex. I barely dated anyone for more than a month since my ex.
Mm.
And, it may well get to a time when I'm dating someone for a few months and, maybe they'll get upset and start shouting at me, or maybe they will, do something else. And there's always this, because the scale of the abuse goes across so many different areas. There's always something to deal with and to work with. Even when I go on a when I go on a date with a girl and she doesn't pay for the first 3 or 4 times, then I start thinking, oh, that's making me feel super uncomfortable because my ex never paid.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there are so many things that will remind you, and you don't know how you're going to react until that moment. You don't know if it's good or not until that moment. But I think ultimately, for me, I'm just always thinking, first of all, this isn't my ex. Secondly, maybe this is the only thing that is the problem up to now.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I think, well, you know what? Let's, I'm aware of it. Let's go on, let's continue on and see where it goes. And if anything, have a conversation and
Yes.
explain the
Yes.
situation. I don't think I've ever got to the point yet where I've dated a girl long enough to explain what I've gone through before.
Really.
Um,
Mm.
but I suspect it will take someone very patient and how would you say, and calm to help me out.
Yeah, I think it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like from your experiences that you are like, it would be different if if you were every time you dated someone, and I mean, it sounds like you're so aware of your triggers that and questioning of yourself. It doesn't sound like you've let something go that you wish you hadn't. So if that was your on reflection, your feeling, that would probably be worrying. And but it sounds like it's guiding you in the right way, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I haven't. I have been in relationships, but nothing that's. I've become very good at getting out when it's not leading to happiness. Like, um, and I think that is partly from that experience. Um, yeah, I just want to also say, I think something positive. I mean, I've definitely come to the conclusion that for me the experience was positive, because in a way it's made me more convinced that most people are, as a species, like most of us, like 99% of us, are born wanting to be nice to others. We're born good. I think it's born, we're born as social animals, like wanting to be nice to other people. And there's about 1%. I mean, I'm quite into like the psychology side, to be honest. And I'm quite like, for me, the experience was so weird. I didn't know this kind of person existed. I always thought bad things happened because of bad situations. But there are people who do bad things because they don't have that goodness that most of us have. But that feeling that of the goodness that most of us have, I feel is more obvious to me now, since that experience. And I think, I don't know, I feel like that's quite a nice way to see it. In a way, it's made me feel. I'm a bit nicer as well since it. And I'm more I'm less impatient with people, I think, because I know what real badness is. So everything else is like just foibles, it's just like little flaws. Um,
I have to say, I've definitely understood, identified, and appreciated nice people more than I have before. And equally, a lot of the dates I've gone on in the last 2 years have been with really, really good, nice people.
mm,
And I've noticed it straight away. Maybe it didn't work for one reason or another, but I've
mm,
noticed straight away. Oh, this is a good person.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I never, to be honest, before that experience, I didn't rate kindness as highly as I should have done. I rated more like being like people who were interesting or challenging. I liked all of that, and I still do, but kindness is now like right at the top. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. I tell you one thing that I found in dates. Well, maybe I'll end with this bit, but then we can go on to maybe lessons learned briefly. But one piece of advice that I got at some point was I used to go on dates and it went really, really, really well, or it seemed to go really well.
Mm,
And they had energy and they were fun and seemed to like me and I liked them and whatever else. And actually, just as on a side note, that's one thing I really changed in what I was doing, which was rather than think to myself, oh, do they like me? I was always thinking, do I like them? And maybe this is something I should have always have done, but I certainly do that now. But this one piece of advice was when something is, you know, like so high, when you come out of a date and you feel so high, um, the phrase is, in a way, the higher the high, the faster the fall. And it's not real. It's not real if you shouldn't be coming out of a first or second date being so on a high that this is the most amazing person.
yeah.
Guess what it sounds like? It sounds like when I first met my ex or whatever else, that you finally find the one or you're so happy and da da da. And so usually now when I go on these dates and, it seems so amazing, my mind, I'm actually thinking, okay, this isn't good. And not that they're going to be abusive in any way, but it's not a good relationship for me, most likely,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm, elated by it because of other things and not because of actually what I need from a relationship. And
Right.
that really good relationship should build over time,
Yeah.
and you should feel that high gradually growing
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard to give up that high, but you're so right.
Exactly.
It is like, and I've heard people say this in my listening to other people's stories. It's like that disordered kind of love is, and I actually don't think it's anything to do with love at all. It's like a brainwashing, but it's nothing like it. There is nothing like it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I dated a girl, or I met a girl recently, let's say, who just life and soul, really fun, like sweet girl, really sweet girl. But and I had a great fun. I thought she was amazing. She's good looking, but in the back of my mind was, I don't think she's so real. I don't think she cares that much. I don't think she's interested that much. But I had such a great time with her. I thought, you know what, let's try and go on a date with her and da da da. And I did, and it was nice, and she's a nice girl. But ultimately, that high falls quite fast because what I felt right at the start, which I chose to ignore, was true, and that she just didn't care that much for other people or was interested in other people, and therefore, you know, all the conversations really wouldn't. There was no reciprocation. It was, and so, you know, doesn't work. Um, but let's move on. Let's talk about lessons learned and what we may perhaps do differently now.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of said what the biggest lessons. Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of, well, I've kind of said what mine are already. I think, like, feeling positively about people in general from finding one that's really bad. Yeah, taking things slowly for sure, for sure. I have a little test now that I would always do if I wasn't. I mean, if I feel unsure, I would always like exit anyway. But someone in any field of life. I mean, as we mentioned, I just want to say, I think yes, with people who are abusers, they can function perfectly normally in work or social, even socially, kind of. And the only damage they really do is when you're under their beam for whatever reason, whether that's at work or in a romantic relationship. Yeah, when you're under the beam, that's when the destruction happens, and it's very targeted. So yes, for me, the biggest test would be like, or the biggest red flag that I would definitely run away from is unable to accept criticism or what they might perceive as criticism. Yes, not just reacting normally to or like getting angry over minor criticism. So that's probably the lesson I'd want to share with people. And like, if someone was anxious about someone else's partner, or like, it's hard if you're from the outside to kind of test that out, but like, because they might not care about your criticism, it's only the person under the beam's criticism they care about. But yeah, that's what I would say. If your partner can't take criticism and freaks out and it turns into a cycle of horror, that's not a good sign. They're probably not a full human being.
Yeah, for sure. I think the things I would add to this are you don't be in a rush to go on dates.
Yeah.
Take your time. Always space the dates out 2 or 3 days, 4 days between dates. I would say
Google, if you're going on a date and they don't want to give you their surname, don't go on a date.
Yeah. Well, that's actually another thing is do your homework a little bit, and that homework could be, you know, if you have mutual friends, talk to the mutual friends, check them out on Facebook, see what they're kind of posting in different places, see about their job, or on LinkedIn, you know, what they're doing there. Also, when you meet them, or even before you meet them, you know, ask them like questions about their most. I think, you know, ask them about their job, ask them about their friends. Be aware if they're telling you stories about problems that they have in their life early on, and if there are a lot of those stories.
Yeah.
Because that could be what we call breadcrumbing before, of
yes.
trying to find someone to help them. That's why most of the time when a girl or someone tells me a problem that they have quite early on, I don't think, oh, they're abusive. I just think, okay, that's a flag. I'm not actually going to help them. Like, even though I could, I'm not going to help them. I'm just going to let them, you know, they can find their own solution. And 99%, in fact, in almost 100% of the time, that's the only problem that they have, or they don't ask me for any other help after that.
Yes.
And that's great. You know, because I know that they're not in the relationship or the friendship to get help from me.
Yeah.
And then we have another thing I would say is introduce them to your friends. as early as possible.
Yeah.
Get them to find to give an opinion. You know, do they take an interest in your friends?
Yeah.
Do your friends like them? Not. What do they think the concerns are, etc.
Yeah.
Also, ask them about the person you're dating. Ask them about their friends. See what kind of response they give. Is it positive? Is it negative? Gives a nice indication.
Ask them about exes. To be honest, this is something that I have heard a lot, and it's quite a common thing already. But it is actually really true. I think if they talk about their ex as if they're a psycho. I mean, I'm doing that right now, but I mean that was the only one. Yeah, if they've had like a string of very bad breakups, or they talk with kind of vileness about their ex, which I do, but whatever. Yeah, that is a really bad sign. If I do tell the story, I mean, to be honest, I just love talking about it, so I do tell a lot of people, even on like the first date, I might tell them about it. But I always say, like, you know, I haven't had any other bad breakups. Like, I've had a lot of breakups, but that was the only one that was horrifying. So,
yeah. Well, I think that goes on to another one, really. But you know, ultimately, be yourself,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's okay to do what you think is best in that situation, and don't overthink things. Don't judge yourself. Don't wish you would have done anything differently.
yeah,
If you want to talk about your ex at one point, then that's fine. If you don't, that's also fine. If that person doesn't understand it, then you know that's for them.
yeah,
Um, and you know, if you feel down one day, that's also okay.
yeah,
If you feel down for a month or a few weeks, then maybe you want to start thinking about why and seeing how you can get yourself out of that with professional help or videos or writing things down or talking to people. Um, but you know, ultimately, be kind to yourself and education is like all the videos, all of the TED talks, YouTube videos, books. There's so much resource out there that you know that if you've got therapy as well. But I think you know there's a whole wealth of information that is there to help as well.
yeah,
And ultimately, you know, we're both in abusive relationships, but you know, it doesn't. It's the past, and the future is uh, is the future. We don't know what that is, and you know, we got to be positive about that. It's the chances of us getting to that situation again without our experience is very, very low.
yeah,
And with our experience is almost minute. Not saying
yeah,
it will happen again, but it's so small because we know of all of the problems.
yeah. We know the story. Yeah,
So, so you've got to feel positive and and lucky in a way to have gone through the experience that we've had, so that you know we've come out the other side much stronger, happier, more aware people that
there's
can
lots of good material.
yeah.
So I just want to say before we go, well, it doesn't have to, yeah. I'm also using that experience to create like an adult series of illustrations, like a picture book, which I'm putting on Instagram. Which maybe at some when I've set it up, I might leave Nick the link so you can have a look. But yeah,
Sure.
it's just my little plug for the future.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the description when we have it.
Yeah.
So so I guess that basically concludes the 4 videos. And wow, we've covered so much.
To be honest, we have, and I feel like, you know, there's as much still like that we could have talked about. Not that we should. But yeah, these experiences are really extraordinary. And yeah, I think telling the story is so important. And yeah, Nick, what you were doing, and you know, you've inspired me to do it. And just adding to the stories out there, I think that is the powerful thing, is the repetition of these stories. They are so similar. And that is what helps people. That is the education that helps people get out. And helps them realize that it's not their fault, that this is something that happens to people, and at the hands of someone who's not fully normal.
Yeah, exactly. And the only way to happiness is to get out of it. And whether you've been in it for 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, it's never too late.
No.
And
once you start talking about it, you hear, I don't know if you found this, but I've heard some extraordinary stories from people who have been in marriages for like, you know, 30-year marriages. And then they realize what's been going on the whole time and why they've been suffering. And they come out. There was a dear woman I knew where I was living before, and she's like having the time of her life in her 50s. She's finally got out of it, and she's like high on life. It's never too late. Never.
Exactly. And ultimately, you know, we've talked about, and I'll probably end on this point, but we talked about the challenges and the difficulties, you know, afterwards. First of all, it's nothing compared to the difficulties and challenges when you're in the relationship.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But the way that I see it is, you really, how would you say, the lower the low, the higher the high. In fact, which basically means as painful as it is, or as difficult as it might be at times, the opportunity, the other side, will be equally as high in terms of the happiness that will come from it.
I like that.
Great. So thank you so much, Hattie.
Thank you.
And everyone else, you know, I hope this helps, and feel free to leave comments. And if there are other videos you would like us to make, or me to make, feel free. And Hattie, if you come up with other topics, we can do those at some point as well.
And I'll just say also that if there's anyone, it is important that people feel they can talk about it without it re-traumatizing them. But I am very interested in talking to more people who've been through this, particularly men, actually, because I know the stories for women, what the story is. It's always the same. But yeah, do reach out to Nick, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So there's a contact address in the on the channel, and if you email me, Hattie, I'll forward it on to Hattie. You can also write it in the comments, and I'm sure Hattie can reply back, or I'll point them out if I see them. But of course, it's a community. But thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye.